Hi everyone, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series, and we've got some really interesting stuff today, including a mention of Grigory Rasputin, and not just a mention, but some interesting, information, probably not true, about him. So our recap, we just finished up the long diary entry of the 24th of November. And now we are going backwards in time, as Dmitri sometimes does. Don't ask me why. But to the 18th of November. Our recap of the 24th. Well, it was a three-part. I divided it into three parts. He didn't write it in three parts. But long discussion of this secret deputation to Teheran of men sent by General Przhevalsky, the head of the Caucasian forces, to discuss going over to the British so that they could continue the war against the Turks in Central Asia, the Caucasus, and also in Mesopotamia. And Dmitri wanted to join the Terek Cossack host for some reason, so he was inquiring about that. This proposal for him to go as an officer translator with General Radet's division had fallen through because General Radetz did not end up going with his division to Mesopotamia. But now we're starting on a whole new topic with a very shady figure who has crossed the border into Tehran. So it is Saturday, the 18th of November, and here we go. In the evening, I unexpectedly received letters from Petrograd brought to me by a certain lieutenant called Korsakov. I don't know him, but I was terribly happy to get news from home. Maria got married on 6 September, and she writes so joyously about that one simply doesn't blank her. May God grant her happiness. The wedding was at Pavlovsk. Papa wasn't there because he was actually under arrest. Maria went to Kerensky to ask him to release him from arrest, but it couldn't be done. It is interesting to read the description of that visit. Kerensky received her in Niki's study in the Winter Palace. There were letters from... Okay, full stop. There were letters from Papa. He is calm and, thank God, healthy. Mamachka writes, but she is calmer this time. But all she says is that there is, quote, strong pressure from Gatchina and Tobolsk, end quote. Apparently, the picture that I had painted for myself was entirely correct. Papa was arrested mainly because of the princess's carelessness. Maria says that she blames Mamachka for everything. I received a ton of letters from Vera. She writes very sweetly and with such warmth and amiability. She apparently received my letters with the cursing about her alarming and incomprehensible letters. She apparently understood my words and replied very sweetly. All the letters are from 17th October, so they predate the Bolshevik uprising. And now a few words about the fellow who brought me the letters. I find Korsakov amazingly unsympathetic. He's very young, but a poseur, always pretending that he knows something or other. But if you do a little digging, it turns out that he knows very little. I was very careful in his presence, though I saw him 2 or 3 days in a row. His story is more or less obscure. He's a former officer from the Pavlovsk Regiment, enrolled at the beginning of 1916 and sent to the Caucasus, whence he ended up in Persia. He said that when he was with Khvostov in Bieletsky, the latter proposed that he kill Rasputin for 500,000 rubles. Along with that, he himself says that he was a great friend of Loman's and at the latter's house often saw Grishka and Anna Zerubova. Wow, okay, interesting fellow. Personally, I think Dmitri's quite right to be skeptical. All right, so these letters, I'll reiterate what he says, are not current. They were written before the Bolshevik takeover. He received them on the 17th of October. It's now the 18th of November, and that was a huge month. with the Bolshevik takeover and everything that ensued. So bear that in mind as we talk about the letters. So interesting that Maria's wedding, which I didn't know, was on 6th September, which was Dmitri's birthday. So that's nice. She got married on her brother's birthday. She writes so joyously, he says. So, yeah, this was really a love match at the time. That would be, a volatile and ultimately unsuccessful relationship. But at that time, apparently, she was head over heels. Okay, let's see. It interests me that Paul's arrest doesn't make a big impression on Dmitri. Kind of what's up with that? Okay, dad's in good health. He's not too worried. And then along with that, he's under arrest. And okay, this description that of Maria's call upon Kerensky at the Winter Palace in Nicholas II's study is very well described over the course, I think, of several pages in her first volume of memoirs, Education of a Princess, and well worth reading. So, yeah, Dmitri is getting this description well in advance of the book, which was published, I think, in 1931 or thereabouts. And he just sort of notes in passing that Maria went to Kerensky to ask for Paul's release from arrest, but it couldn't be done. So he's not blaming Kerensky. This is interesting that he uses that passive form. It couldn't be done rather than, but Kerensky wouldn't do it, or, so he's still giving Kerensky the benefit of the doubt, and had in fact been a fan of Kerensky's way back when he'd considered Kerensky a man of action. But anyway, just a little side note there. Mamichka. Okay, so Mamichka is what Dmitri called his stepmother. So Princess Palais, Paul's wife, when they were adolescents and young adults, Dmitri and Maria had been absolutely opposed to Princess Palais, and always referred to her in formal terms, and they did not use the informal you with her or she with them. But now she's Mamichka. And that happened at some point before the revolution. But they're still, okay, so they're blaming her for what happens with Paul. Dmitri wrote about that in an earlier diary entry, as he mentions, that she had circulated some nasty things about Kerensky and the provisional government and so on, and that those things had leaked out, and that was why Paul was arrested. So now both siblings are blaming Mamichka for everything, but Dmitri is still using this sort of pet term like Mamichka. Okay, what does this mean when he says, all she says is that there is strong pressure from Gatchina and Tobolsk, and she puts that in quotes, or he puts that in quotes, he's quoting her. So pressure from, not pressure on or in. I'm not sure what to make of that. Gatchina, of course, was the home of Grand Duke Mikhail Alexandrovich and Brasova, his wife, Countess Brasova. Tobolsk is where Nicholas and Alexandra and their children had been taken. So make of that what you will. And then the next batch of letters is from Vera Karali, Dmitri's girlfriend / mistress, whatever you want to call her, in Petrograd during the war. And if you recall, in one of the very first 1917 diary entries, Dmitri was complaining that he'd gotten these crazy letters from Vera saying that she was going to come join him in Persia, and all of these various things, and it alarmed him, and he wrote to her, he refers to cursing. She received my letters with the cursing. He puts cursing in quotes, so he doesn't literally mean expletives, but just telling her, what are you, crazy? Stop this. Don't talk about me with people. Don't come to Persia. Just, you know. So she must have really been off the rails, because he even now refers to her alarming and incomprehensible letters. But now she's back to being, you know, sweet, sane Vera again. And so he's very happy to have these letters, clearly. Let's see. So then we get to all of this about, well, first starting with Korsakov, when Dmitri says he's amazingly unsympathetic. That's not Dmitri's way of saying he doesn't sympathize with me. That's the other, you know, the other meaning of the word sympathetic. He's amazingly, I don't care for him. He's amazingly unappealing to me. Very young, but a poseur, yes. A know-it-all, pretending that he knows everything, that he has the inside story about everything. An adventurer, you could say, somebody who's opportunistically, you know, using the revolution and the chaos to have some fun, enrich himself. Who knows what? But there were lots of these types around, if indeed Dmitri's assessment of Korsakov is correct. You know, Korsakov does have these letters. He was entrusted with these letters at some point by someone. So, you know, it's a lot of, it sounds to me like it's a lot of what you would call in U.S. English BS. So it's, yeah, the guy is just elevating him, trying to elevate himself in Dmitri's eyes. All of this about Khvostov, Bieletsky, Loman, related to Rasputin. First, I have to admit that I don't have any information except for what Dmitri provides about Korsakov. And I don't even, you know, he doesn't even give us a Christian name and patronymic. So there's really no way to look this guy up. So Dmitri informs us that he was, he's a lieutenant. He was with the Pavlovsk regiment. He's not now. After the revolution, he's not still an active duty service member. He was sent to the Caucasus in 1916, and so ended up in Persia after the revolution. And he's making this claim about being an insider with relation to these two men who had been behind an earlier attempt, previous to Yusupov and Dmitri's attempt to assassinate Rasputin, in a conspiracy with a man named Ilyador, who was some kind of unfrocked priest or something. Yeah, Khvostov and Bieletsky, who were they? So we have Alexei Nikolaevich Khvostov, who was the Minister of Interior in Russia, an important man in 1915, 1916, more or less owed his position as minister to Rasputin. But then at some point he saw the light, so to speak. He realized that Rasputin was a great danger to the country. I don't know if there were other things to it than that. It was undoubtedly a complicated relationship. These things always are complicated, but the upshot is that he ended up turning on Rasputin, and he did so with the man who was his deputy or assistant minister of interior and the head of the police, Stepan Petrovich Bieletsky, and they conspired with Ilyador. That assassination plot didn't work. I don't think it went very far. Bieletsky and Khvostov both had to leave their posts since they were now anti-Rasputin anyway. I didn't brush up on any of this, but it just seems very, very unlikely that this, I mean, Dmitri was 26, but he's calling Korsakov very young. So that this young man in his early 20s, I guess, should have been their, you know, hanging out with the Minister of Interior and the Deputy Minister of Interior, and yeah, maybe not hanging out, but what Dmitri says is that they approached him rather than Ilyador and proposed that he kill Rasputin for 500,000 rubles. What? So they were trying to hire him as a hitman, so to speak. So what is that all about? Crazy, crazy stuff. Okay. Yeah, and then Loman. So Korsakov now identifies himself as a great friend of Dmitri Nikolaevich Loman, who was one of Rasputin's primary supporters, along with Anna Virubova. And so, on the one hand, Korsakov is saying that he was approached by anti-Rasputin, Fostov and Beletsky, to kill Rasputin for 500,000. On the other hand, he's saying he's a great friend of Loman's and that he often visited Anna Virubova's house and saw Rasputin there. Dmitri calls Rasputin Grishka, as he sometimes does, Grishka being the diminutive for Grigory. Did other people in his circle, or Nicholas and Alexander, or anybody around Dmitri, call Rasputin Grishka? Or was that just something that Dmitri did? I don't know. Yeah, so apologies, I didn't do a very good job with this, because now that it comes down to it, I realize I didn't look up Loman and remind myself exactly who he was. He appears in one of the most famous photographs of Rasputin, and he's wearing a military uniform. Yeah, anyway, the point being that this is just crazy stuff, that this very young man would come and say that he had all this, he was an insider with the Minister of Interior, with Loman and Virubova, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, yeah. What do we have next time? More about Korsakov. Dmitri is going to tell us a bit more about this person, and also talk about the news he has from the Lamings, and more about this principle of his about dividing the political from the personal and prioritizing the political over the personal. All right, so I hope to see you then. Bye.